One thing the majority of video game characters have in common is that they're pretty hard to relate to, and before you start trying to convince me that when you kick off people think you and Kratos were separated at birth, or you're just like Lara Croft because you carried a spider to the back door once, please stop. Don't babysit a babysitter, or whatever that saying is. But the thing about Luisa, the protagonist of Dungeons of Hinterberg, is that I can almost guarantee that most people over 25 will relate to her to a worrying degree. See, Luisa is bored. Borderline depressive too, I'd say. She's a lawyer who kind of hates practicing law. She has a roommate who wants her to move out so she can move her boyfriend in, and overall she's just kind of sick of it all. She longs for a change, but doesn't know how to enforce one. She wants to find herself, but doesn't know where to look. She wants to prove herself, even if the only judge is her. Sounding familiar yet? But instead of wallowing in it, inhaling her body weight in ice cream or going on a shopping spree, Luisa takes action. She packs her bags and says goodbye to Vienna for a few weeks in Hinterberg, which is arguably the most dangerous tourist destination in the world. See, Hinterberg is the site of a major magical calamity that has created portals into other worlds through which actual monsters have travelled, infesting the mountains and setting up lairs within magical pocket dimensions, colloquially known as dungeons. There are 25 in all, and Luisa is determined to see them all. See, rather than say cordon them off or attempt to keep people out, the powers that be are using the dungeons as tourist attractions. Backpackers known as Slayers tool up with specialist branded armour and weapons and spelunk through hordes of monsters, puzzles and deadly bosses for the sheer thrill of it. There's catharsis in it, I suppose, smashing in a few heads legally and above board, then harvesting the severed body parts of your victims to sell for better gear. I mean, not my idea of a holiday, but Microbird Games makes it all seem fairly normal. There's even a TV show that covers the adventures, and Hinterberg itself is thriving thanks to the increased tourism. In gameplay terms, it amounts to a kind of Breath of the Wild alike. Each destination is an enclosed space with scattered NPCs, a few monster encounters, a smattering of dungeons and a few scenic spots so you can just unwind for a while. Each new day is chopped into segments. In the morning, Luisa decides where she's going to go. In the afternoon, she goes there. In the evening, she visits the town itself to stock up on potions, buy, sell or upgrade her gear and socialise, and at night she can either rest or stay up late boosting her stats with TV or books at the cost of a tired morning where she has less HP. The morning is usually over quickly though. You'll usually chat with the owner of the B&B you're staying in, or Alex and Klaus, two veteran slayers who act as your guides and confidants. A social system means it matters how you respond to probing questions or how you act in certain situations. The afternoon is where the meat of the game takes place though. Here you can explore the chosen area and either tackle a dungeon or visit a scenic spot. These spots can boost Luisa's HP and mana, but you get no loot. Ideally, you want to visit a scenic spot after a late night spent reading or watching TV, as they counteract Luisa's fatigue. You can't visit a scenic spot and do a dungeon in the same day. Now the dungeons themselves are fairly eclectic. The usual laws of time and space don't always apply within them, and each one contains a small set of puzzles, multiple loot chests, a hidden commemorative coin and sometimes a tough boss fight at the end. They're similar in form and function to Breath of the Wild shrines, only they're usually a bit longer. You should always be exploring the dungeons that suit Luisa's level too. You can tackle harder ones if you like, but it's not recommended as it isn't really worth it, and the combat simply isn't nuanced enough to promote seeking challenge. You have a heavy and light attack and a dodge. Luisa can equip charms to buff her stats like attack and defense, and armor which adjusts her protection factors but doesn't alter her appearance sadly. Special attacks like a whirlwind move and leap attack can be learned at the spellsmithy in town, which are on long cooldowns but deal decent damage. Later you'll get more useful techniques like the ability to drain enemy shields in the vicinity. Combat feels a little bit sluggish, and the way it throws up a ring of magic that traps you in it with the enemies until they're all dead is a little uninspired. There's not much visual spectacle to it either, and even with a selection of special techniques it quickly became my least favourite part of Dungeons of Hinterberg. I much preferred exploring the dungeons themselves, solving the various puzzles involving special spells that only work in a given area, a laser beam plus a hoverboard for grinding rails, a tornado that can carry you over obstacles, and a huge ball that can be summoned and detonated are among these area specific abilities, and the dungeons in each area are designed around them, which means you always have the solution. None of the puzzles are particularly fiendish, though they do become more complex as Luisa tackles higher level dungeons. Evenings in Hinterberg are spent shopping for new potions, buying weapons and armour, selling your loot and upgrading your equipment. There's a large variety of shops and services, including souvenir shops where you can buy gifts for the various NPCs you meet. Luisa has 4 stats outside of her combat abilities: familiarity, renown, amusement and relaxation. Each is important for different reasons. For example, legendary Slayer Renaud won't deign to talk to Luisa until her renown is high enough. You increase these stats by spending time making friends, learning about the town and its history, enjoying yourself and chilling out between dungeon delving. It's not a complex or intricate system, but genuinely feels like downtime to break up the action. You can choose to spend time with lots of different characters and each adds something to the experience. The pretty visuals and tranquil music add to the atmosphere, with manageable combat and puzzles giving it all some much needed spice. There are a few visual bugs here and there though, despite the fairly low rent aesthetics. If the combat felt a little bit more thrilling, I'd be all in, but the more I played, the less awed I felt by the setup. Ultimately, Dungeons of Hinterberg feels like a chilled out version of the usual action adventure titles like the aforementioned Breath of the Wild. You could just explore the scenic spots, advancing time that way for a bit, taking in the sights and sounds of Hinterberg and visiting the town's various festivals. But if you want to progress and aid Luisa in her quest for self-discovery, you'll eventually have to get your hands dirty. However you choose to spend your time, Dungeons of Hinterberg feels warm and welcoming despite the snow, and for that reason I'm going to score it an 8 out of 10. Hi there, hope you enjoyed that review of Dungeons of Hinterberg. If you did, please hit like and subscribe and tag the bell icon too, so you're kept up to date with everything we post going forward. And if you want to support us via Patreon, you go ahead and do that at www.patreon.com/GodIsAGeek. In the meantime, I've been Mick Fraser and you guys have been lovely. Bye.